Alright, what's going on, guys? Hope you're all doing good. So we've got a little bit of a talking video, educational video today, and we're going to be talking about braid, and specifically what braid you should be using when lure fishing for pike. There's a lot of people that are a little bit confused on this subject still. It's quite widely discussed, but a lot of people are still confused on what braid to use and why, and a bit confused why people use such high breaking strains. So we're going to break it down a little bit today. We're going to go into a little bit more detail on why you use the breaking strains that you do for pike fishing with lures, and yeah, hopefully it'll help some people out who are just sort of getting into it and trying to figure things out for themselves. We're going to start off on the high end of the scale. We're going to talk about the big heavy lure rods first, the big bait casting rods. And personally, I've got my big bait casting rod here. On this, right now, I have 80-pound braid, and I'll go up to probably 100-pound braid max. And speaking of diameters, like this is the braid I've got now. I say 80, it's 79-pound braid, but it's basically 80-pound braid. 0.35. For the heavy rod, we're talking 100-gram lures plus. That's the lowest diameter I'll actually throw. I'll go up to 0.4 mil diameter, so 0.35 to 0.4, sort of the sweet spot. And we're talking in that diameter, different brands, different braids have different diameters for breaking strain. It's whatever, but yeah, 0.35 to 0.4 is sort of your sweet spot for the heavy rods. Now, why you want to use such a big diameter? Because this is where a lot of people seem to get confused. You go on Facebook, you read the comments when someone's asking about braid, and it's you know, you get a few comments like, "Oh, what are you fishing for? Sharks? You expected to catch a seal with that, mate? What's that doing using such thick braid? They'll take fun out at fight. Get some 10-pound nylon on there, and that's all that needs." That's my Barnsley accent. Been working on that one. But yeah, a lot of people are confused why you use heavy breaking strains, and it's not because you're expecting to catch big fish. It's a sense of physics, really. When you're throwing 100+ gram lure, especially on a bait caster, the line comes directly off the spool here. It's not like a fixed spool where it comes off the rim of the spool first. It comes directly off the spool, and I'll even be able to show you with this, but that can just dig straight in if you've like that. If you get a little bit of a backlash, that's dug in a little bit there. When that digs in, the spool stops. The lure's still traveling at 20-30 mile an hour. That stops with anything less than 80-pound breaking strain. It just snaps. It just cracks you off. I learned the hard way with crack-offs. I was using 60-pound braid, which is still quite strong. I had a 23cm Fox replicant and a water wolf camera, so it was probably a total of about 200 grams cast into a gravel pit, probably about 10-15 yards into the cast. Backlash, crack, straight off, sailed into the distance. Water wolf and lure gone forever. I did actually go swimming, but it was April, I think. It was a little bit brisk, so yeah, didn't really get it. Just got wet, lost my lure. But yeah, I learned the hard way then. Don't use low breaking strains with the big lures. And it's not a case of like skill or anything like that. It's, you know, if you're casting 300, 400, 500 times in a day, you're gonna have a cast that goes slightly wrong. Your thumb control might be slightly off compared to what it normally is. It's gonna, you know, get caught in the wind. The lure's gonna hit the water before you expect it to. That braid's gonna dig in, and you'll crack off, or you'll get an almighty, like, once the braid's dug in, like, ridiculously hard to get out. So you might spend like 20-30 minutes trying to unpick your braid. And yeah, it's just a question of physics. A 100-gram object traveling at 20-30 mile an hour, like I say, if that suddenly stops, the small amount of line holding that is getting a lot of tension on it. Like, let me just take this braid for example. This is 30-pound braid here. Obviously it's quite strong, you know. Catch 40-pound fish on 30-pound braid, no problem. Pull that against itself, no problem. But just wrap this so I don't cut my fingers off. You add a sharp snap motion onto it, it snaps, and that's what happens with your lure. I hurt my fingers a lot, but yeah, it digs into your fingers, it digs into the spool, and as I just proved there, sudden stop or a sudden jerk with it, it'll snap your braid. And that is why you want to be using heavy breaking strains. I say a lot of people still don't understand that's why you use it. You know, think it's taking the fight out of the fish. You know, the braid, whether your braid's £20, £50, £80, £300, braid's got no stretch at all anyway. So it doesn't change the fight with the fish, the diameter of the braid. So yeah, heavy rods, 0.35 to 0.4 mil is the sweet spot in my opinion. The brand doesn't matter, like everyone's got different preferences for braid brand. In heavy breaking strains, J-Braid is good. I don't quite like it as much in the light breaking strains. Savage Gear Silencer's a good braid. Spiderwire, Smooth 8. A lot of people don't like it, I've never had a problem. 90 pound Spiderwire comes in at 0.35 I think as well. So slightly different breaking strains, same diameter. But yeah, and also another thing to mention, it's not why you use the heavy breaking strain, but it is an added bonus. If you get your 40 pound Mirror's Mouth stuck 70 foot up in a tree, there's a good chance you're going to rip it back out with 80 pound braid, bending your hook straight, pulling your split rings out or something. There's a good chance, not always. I know my friend Daniel actually lost his mirror. He messaged me yesterday saying he lost his Mirror's Mouth in a tree. So you don't always get your lures back, but it does help. So that's the heavy ones. I feel like I've gone a little bit too long, but it stops digging in because the braid's thicker, stops you cracking off. You get your lures back from snags. Yeah, it's better. It's just trust me on that. If you're using a fixed ball, I wouldn't recommend using a fixed ball lure fishing with 100 gram plus lures just because your tip of finger will not last very long. But if you are, you don't need to use such a high breaking strain because the crack off risk isn't there. And one more thing that's worth mentioning as well, if you're using heavy lures, the rods are so much stiffer. So a hook set, again, if you're good at hook sets and you're hook setting against a fish with a stiff rod and you've got 20 pound breaking strain, it's going to break. Like, you can get away with soft rods with light braid on a good hook set, but with a stiff hard rod, solid hook set against a big fish, that your braid's going to part. It's as simple as that. Braid's got no give, and yeah, unfortunately that happens. So yeah, but if you're using the lighter rods and lighter lures, so we're going to move down a step. So that's my heavy rod, 100 to 200 gram lures. I'll cast with that rod typically. My next rod down comes in, this is a 14 to 42 gram rod, the Rodfather. Struggling to focus there, but yeah, this is a 14 to 42 gram rod, so it's quite a bit softer. And this, I actually have this Chinese braid, it's 30 pound braid, this one. I can't remember the diameter off the top of my head, but I'll probably say it's a 0.2 or a 0.22, something like that. I'll put the diameter on the screen here, but yeah, I think it's probably like a 0.2. And again with this, you need a stronger breaking strain than the fish you're going to be expecting to catch, because again, even with a 45 gram lure, this is sort of the top end of what I cast with this, you still got a chance of digging in, and with 10 pound braid, it will crack. So 30 pound braid, I think up to about 50 gram lure, I feel comfortable of not cracking off with that. It digs in a little bit more than the other rod, but it's not too bad with the lure sizes for this rod. Again, it still sounds like quite a heavy breaking strain braid, especially if we're fishing for jack pike, which, you know, 2 to 5 pound fish. Yeah, obviously you're going to be able to get the fish landed, but you know, you don't need it to be super tough, but you don't want it to be way too soft, too weak. Sorry. So yeah, that's on this medium setup. Obviously, if I had a setup between these two that was maybe like a 60 to 80 gram setup, I'd step the braid up again, maybe go 40, 50 pound braid. And again, if there's an even lighter setup, I'd go lighter with the braid. And in terms of fixed spools as well, I'd kind of, for pike fishing, I'd kind of hover around the 20 to 30 pound mark, especially if you're using 8 strand braid. I feel like the diameter is low enough for you to like comfortably be able to fish without the braid being too thick and like obnoxiously like brewing presentation and stuff like that. So yeah, 20 to 30 pound. If you're using a heavier fixed spool setup, obviously you're going to want to up the braid just you know, for hook sets and snags and stuff like that really. And yeah, that's it. Obviously you got 4-strand braid and 8-strand braid. This is 8-strand, this is 4-strand. 8-strand braid is a lot thinner for the breaking strain, whereas 4-strand's a bit thicker for the breaking strain. So like, it doesn't matter which you use. Like I say, I'm using both of these. This is a super cheap. A lot of people use this Chinese one. Like a lot of brands, like the cheap 4-strand brands, it's all the same braid basically. So cheap braids, it's all made in the same factory. The more expensive branded stuff is different between brands, but it's all pretty similar as well, to be honest with you. So it doesn't really matter what you use, just go for the diameter, go for a decent breaking strain for the diameter as well. And yeah, you should be alright. Just don't go too light with the braid for pike fishing. That's the main thing. Like, it's got no give in it, it's got no stretch, and if you hook a big fish on a stiff rod, it's very easy to part braid if it's too light of a breaking strain. So bear that in mind. A lot of people that get into bait casting just backlash and get it dug in because they've gone too light with the braid. And yeah, it's not what you want. So yeah, I just realised that when I was breaking the braid with my hand, I gashed my finger with it. So that's what actually happens to your reel if it doesn't crack off. The braid digs in that much and it's a ball ache to peel out. So yeah, I'm waffling now, but that's going to do for this video. Quick one. Just going over what braids use for pike fishing, lure fishing in particular, especially with bait casters. Obviously we mentioned the fixed spools a little bit. Slightly lower breaking strains on the fixed spool, slightly higher on the bait casters. Heavier you casting, the heavier the breaking strain. And yeah, but I'll in the description I'll give a little bit of a better categorization of what I think. But remember, this is my own opinion. Everyone's got their own different opinion. I've got a good amount of experience catching pike on lures, so I feel like, well, what I've learned from the experience I've got is what I'm sharing with you, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope it's been helpful for anyone who was curious. And yeah, that's going to do it. So catch you in the next one, guys.